By the 1970s, it had become obvious to even the most dense philosophers that Marxism wasn't working in the real world. Everywhere Marxist ideas had been applied produced a disaster. If you were a Marxist, it became clear that change was needed. But what? This is where the French philosopher Jacques Derrida stepped in to update Marxism, a Marxism 2.0 if you will. Where Marxism 1.0 was concerned with the imagined power conflict between the proletariat and the bourgeoisie, Derrida placed Marxism on a new foundation of identity politics and the power relationships that exist between different groups. Where worker versus capitalist was once the rallying cry of Marxists worldwide, it would now be male against female, black versus white, gay versus straight, etc. Given how different people are, there is literally no end to this, as all you need to do is to find a quality in yourself and then find its opposite. The only thing left to do is to argue about which quality makes one the oppressor or the oppressed. Initially, these ideas were used by the postmodernists in the world of literary criticism. This is not so bad, as there are endless ways to interpret a text. Where postmodernism falls apart, however, much like Marxism 1.0, is when these ideas are applied to the real world. There may be thousands of ways to interpret a text, but those interpretations can never be as equally valuable or useful. If you read Hamlet and your takeaway is that it is a good idea to kill yourself and your family, this has little use in the real world. Postmodernists, as they are really just advocating Marxism 2.0, reject this. To them, all of the values of the Enlightenment that have created Western civilization, concepts like reason, science, dialogue, individual rights, empiricism, etc., are all masks to cover up the truth, which is the power relationships that exist between different identity groups. To them, all people do is interpret the world based on their identities in order to create hierarchical power structures that are then used to gain power over other identities. It is these power structures that, according to critical theory, must be recognized and overthrown. This is how postmodernism literally acts like a cancer within the body of Western civilization. It literally seeks to overthrow the Enlightenment values that created it. When systems of thought cannot be supported with reason or evidence, ideologues and religious fanatics will often defend their worldview by creating their own epistemologies. In my opinion, this is exactly what Karl Marx did with Marxism. He literally created an entire system of thought to justify the fact that he was a shiftless bum. A more modern example of this is the Christian philosopher Alvin Plantinga, who has come up with the idea that some people can sense God in the same way that we can sense color if they are blessed with a God sensor. He considers this logical proof of God's existence. Postmodernism, like some kind of noxious weed in a beautiful garden, has taken root in the modern university. It is here that the postmodernists have corrupted whole departments by creating their own reality-free epistemologies. It is here that they proselytize the young, using their own fabricated knowledge bases and publishing the journals that no one reads. When their ideas are questioned, the response of the postmodernist is not to engage in debate or discussion, as these are Enlightenment values which they reject. They see debate or discussion as tools of the oppressor class, which is why questions can be dismissed with a simple, "You're a white male," if they even decide to respond at all. This is what feminist author Christine Hoff Sommers encountered when she decided to question the ideas of postmodern feminists.
In the late 80s, I was teaching philosophy, and the chair of my department said, well, why don't you teach feminist theory? And at the time, I didn't.
Where was this?
At Clark University.
Clark.
I sent away for the textbooks, and I thought, okay, I'm a feminist and a philosopher. I assumed when I sent away for the texts that it would be like other philosophy textbooks, that this feminist theory text would be the best that was thought and said, about issues that concern women. So really good arguments for and against affirmative action or surrogate motherhood or abortion and so forth. Because I just thought it was a sacred commandment of college teaching, thou shalt teach both sides of the argument. And that's what I had always done. I never saw the classroom as a place for me to pass along my beliefs, particular beliefs to students, but to give them the tools to make decisions themselves. These textbooks shocked me. They were, first of all, they were putting forward something that looked to me as a philosopher, it looked to me as a conspiracy theory about the patriarchy. And most of these selections were mutually reinforcing. Rather than real debate, you just had, it seemed like propaganda. And naively, I thought, well, this is a mistake. And I sent away for more, and I became concerned. And I went to the American Philosophical Association and gave a paper on, what's gone wrong with feminist theory. Now, typically when you go to the APA, it's contentious, and everyone in the audience tries to find fault with what you say. I was prepared for that. But then you go out for drinks. We did not go out for drinks. And I was not prepared for people hissing and booing and stamping their feet. And that evening I was excommunicated from a religion I didn't even know existed.
Another aspect of how the postmodernists create their own realities is in their utter corruption of language. For example, to most people, racism is the act of judging a person based on skin color. The postmodernists reject this common sense definition and instead corrupt it by bolting on a power vector that only goes one way. This is why, to a postmodernist, it is impossible for a black person to be racist to a white person, as the white person, according to their epistemology, has the power. The result of this is that a white person can be racist to LeBron James because of his or her white power. The reverse, however, cannot be true, as LeBron James is black. The fact that he is worth $400 million is irrelevant to the postmodernists. LeBron James derives no power from this. Once again, this nonsensical view cannot be challenged, as to the postmodernists it's all about identity-power relationships, not the enlightenment values of reason or logic.
You're fucking a white male! You're a white man! No, I have done my research. Bullshit! Bullshit!
In the universities, the departments that have proven to be most resistant to postmodernist thought are, unsurprisingly, those whose ideas must exist in the real world. It is difficult for obscure and illogical theories to take root in such disciplines as the sciences, economics, or engineering. In softer fields, however, such as literature, history, or gender studies, these departments have become absolutely corrupted by postmodernist thought. These departments are where the intellectual cover is given for students to behave like this. Dialogue and reason are out. Identity power politics are in. Postmodernism in practice is in many ways a corrupt religion with privilege its original sin. However, unlike Christianity, it has no redemptive narrative. To postmodernists, if you are born with the sin of privilege, you will always be a sinner, and there is nothing you can do about it. Once a white male, always a white male. Likewise, postmodernism has its own form of blasphemy laws under the guise of political correctness and hate speech laws. What postmodernism does not have, however, is any kind of cohesive structure behind it. Its view of power structures is entirely subjective, and who is on top is entirely arbitrary. If you reject even a tiny portion of the postmodernist religion, you will find yourself excommunicated. This is what happened to the deeply progressive, Bernie Sanders supporting biology professor Brett Weinstein at Evergreen State College. By merely suggesting that it is inappropriate to force white students and professors to not attend for a day, the postmodernist mob turned on him with a vengeance. Professor Weinstein tried to reason with the students, but trained in the anti-enlightenment values of postmodernism, his reasoned arguments fell on deaf ears.
Between debate and dialectic. Debate, wait a second. No, it is. Debate means you are trying to win. Dialectic means you are using disagreement to discover what is true. I am not interested in debate. I am interested only in dialectic, which does mean I listen to you and you listen to me.
You don't have the email. We don't care what terms you want to speak on. This is not about you.
I'm talking about this is all about him.
On terms of white privilege. This is not a discussion. You have lost that one.
In the final analysis, postmodernism, by attempting to undermine and replace enlightenment values with identity politics, is antithetical to both higher education and Western civilization itself. If it is not recognized for the cancer that it is, and removed root and branch, it will destroy both, for it seeks to do nothing less. By seeing everything through the lens of identity politics, postmodernists have turned their philosophy into a self-fulfilling prophecy, for it literally creates citizens who see themselves as various competing identities first, rather than as citizens united with shared values. In the long run, it is impossible to build a cohesive society on this movement, and it will not be long before, like Oberus, it consumes itself. The only question for the wider society is how violent and damaging it will be.